one keep in mind as far as the emotional toll that this journey will take on an adoptee and on the birth parent, and some of the emotions that may arise and how one can prepare themselves for those,
Yeah.
and to be the
So,
supportive space for
right.
these individuals.
So adoption is family separation.
Yeah.
Family separation is inherently traumatic, and it doesn't matter if, some people are like, oh, it's a brand new baby, if they're, looking at adopting a baby. It's still inherently traumatic. You are breaking biological bonds, even if birth parents are going to be involved in, this child's life. It's a completely different
For
relationship.
sure.
And so, and that can be really hard for folks
Mhm.
to swallow, because that doesn't fit in with the, adoption narrative that a lot of us hear about,
Right.
growing up and in the mainstream, world.
Mhm.
And so that can be really hard to sit with. And there's often, I think, defense mechanisms that can come up around, children just need love, and I'm gonna love them so much, and they're so wanted, and that's all important. Children should
Right.
be loved and wanted within the family that's raising them. It's also important to acknowledge that something had to break in order for an adoptive family to come together and allow both truths to exist. And
Sure.
so when we're talking about birth parents, it's something has just incredibly traumatic has happened. And I think that there can be a real dehumanization of birth parents of, they didn't want this child, or, XYZ characteristics about a birth parent or experiences about a birth parent make them not have the feelings that, one would expect a parent who's being separated from their child to have. We know that that's not true. This is a really traumatic experience. There are studies after studies talking about how this is an incredibly traumatic experience, that and that grief does not go away after, some specific period of time. It continues, it changes, but it continues.
Right.
And so similarly for an adoptee, you are talking about somebody who is separated from their biological roots, potentially their culture, their race, their religion, familiarity. And that even if they are still connected in some way, it's inherently different. And so
Right.
it's, I think we sort of covered that it is traumatic.
Yeah.
Right, it is traumatic.
For
And so
sure.
if you are on the adoptive parent side, you're sort of holding two very different truths, because you can literally be having the most wonderful day of your life the day, you become a parent to this child,
Right.
and their birth family is in the deepest grief imaginable. And so finding ways to sort of acknowledge, okay, both of these things are true,
Right.
and that you feeling happy does not detract from this person's grief, and this person's grief does not detract from your happiness. They all exist in what can be uncomfortable ways,
Mm.
but finding ways to acknowledge somebody else's pain, not dehumanize their experience, and try to negate it, and really be able to sit in, the difficult feelings that somebody else is having. I often say, it's not your job to like counsel this person on their grief in terms of
Right.
a birth parent, but making sure that they have access to somebody who will understand what that's like
Right.
for them. It's not an easy thing to find support folks in that way, but there are great nonprofits doing some real great work with birth parents
Amazing.
and providers who understand their experiences. And it's important, if you have if your child's biological parents are struggling,
Right.
that you can try to connect them with those places that might be able to understand, while also making sure that you are really sitting in, as much empathy as you can.